All right, so let's explore the part-time real estate agent. That comes with a lot of different challenges. And I coach a lot of part-time real estate agents. I made a lot of content about how to succeed as a part-time real estate agent, but there's something that I believe that is the number one challenge or the number one threat for most real estate agents. And social psychologists call this the 100% rule. And we're going to get into great details about what this is and how this applies to real estate agents that are part-time, that maybe have a full-time job. And I'm hoping that through this conversation comes clarity for people that I think struggle with the decision as to, should I go full-time in real estate? Should I continue to be part-time? If I do go full-time, when should I do that? When's the right time? What should I have in place? These are all the questions that I get often from part-time real estate agents. And before I think any of those questions can be answered, to be fair, we have to really explore what we're going to talk about in this video. So social psychologists, they did a study. And the study that they did was on successful entrepreneurs versus those people that wanted to be an entrepreneur, but they haven't yet started. It was the idea of starting a business. And when I started to really dig deep and understand all that went into this, I said, wow, that is exactly what people are dealing with every day when they're thinking about in terms of being part-time in real estate and this whole idea of going full-time. And so I'm going to start this conversation off by a quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes. He said, "A mind stretched by new experience can never go back to its former dimensions." And so in this study, and I'm going to show you a video here in just a second from Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who talks about this in great detail. But in the study, they talked a lot about this idea of the point of no return. That in the study, those entrepreneurs that went off to start businesses, to succeed in those businesses, versus those that didn't, really got themselves into this point of no return. And as defined by these psychologists, here's some things that they talked about. Number one, and this is so critical, was those that succeeded in business made a financial investment into their future self. This was the beginning of the point of no return. And when I thought about that, what happened was a lot of these entrepreneurs would, as the example they gave, one entrepreneur made the investment into a pallet of shoes because this entrepreneur was going to build this shoe store online, sell these shoes online. And before he was ready, he invested the money into the product. And so he had no choice. That pallet showed up at his house with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pairs of shoes that at that moment, he was at a point of no return. And so I think about, how does this relate to part-time real estate agents? How can we apply this if you are a part-time real estate agent? Well, making an investment into your future self could look like a couple of things. I've talked about this in a lot of different videos. One is that you're certainly investing in your education, getting your licenses, whatever certifications you may deem necessary. Maybe you invest in a coaching program up front. We have had many part-time real estate agents with the goal of going full-time invest in our coaching program, the Listing Agent Academy, to set themselves up to prepare themselves to go full-time. The other thing I think about when I talk about making the financial investment into your future self is setting up the savings in a way that allows you to potentially leave your full-time employment to get into real estate full-time. And making that investment, and in other words, are you saving enough money to go full-time in real estate? And in many cases, I recommend that be 6 months of savings. and not just savings, but 6 months worth of what you make today and 6 months worth of bills or expenses. And you're generating the income from your part-time real estate sales, and we're investing that money into this 6-month nest egg so that you can save or invest in your future self. And that future self, for most people that want to become a full-time real estate agent. When this happened, the psychologists determined when people went through this point of no return, they made the financial investment into their future self, that alone shifted their identity. That when they went all in with a financial investment and the money was spent, that at that very moment, their identity shifted and their behavior started to align with the new identity. Whereas before, the person who had maybe had the full-time job, who didn't make the financial investment with the entrepreneurs that didn't succeed, their identity never shifted. And therefore, as a result, their behavior didn't change. They continued to behave like their current or old self. And those that said, I'm going to commit to this investment into my future self, then their behavior aligned with that new identity. And there's something that Dr. Benjamin Hardy talks about. I'm going to play this video for you guys in just a second. And this whole idea, and this is thus why I'm making this video, which is 100% commitment is easier for humans than 98% commitment. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Take a listen to Dr. Benjamin Hardy.
But that idea is also actually backed by a lot of very interesting science and psychology. So again, the quote is 100% is easier than 98%. And the reason why this is so important is because if you're only 98% committed to something, what that means is that you're not actually truly committed. You're not actually fully there. You haven't actually made the decision. And if you haven't made a decision about something, what that means is that you're not actually sure what you're going to do. If Elko was only 98% committed, and he was in an environment where his favorite dessert was served, then he would have to play a tug of war in his mind about what he was going to do. Do I eat it this time? Do I not eat it? And that right there, that mental tug of war, is called decision fatigue. Basically, the idea of decision fatigue is, it's another word for willpower. But it means you haven't yet made a choice, and you're not actually sure what you're going to do. And because you're not sure what you're going to do, often the situation wins. That's one of the most consistent things that's found in social psychology, is that generally people are the byproduct of their situation. And the reason for that is because people are not decided. Michael Jordan actually had a very powerful quote. Michael Jordan said, "Once I made a decision, I never thought about it again." And kind of the Latin root of the word decision means that once you make a decision, you have to actually cut off alternative options. And so because Elko made 100% commitment rather than a 98% commitment, and he also shifted his identity by asking himself, he didn't ask himself the question, could I do this for the next 30 days? Because if you think about it, if you want to do something for 30 days, then you definitely haven't changed how you see yourself. You're basically saying, I think I can do this for about 30 days, but then once that 30 days is over, or that year is over, I'm going to go right back to doing what I was. But maybe then I'll have a little bit more control. That's not what happened to Tom Hartman. That's not what happened to Elko. And as a result, those two people, they made a fundamental, a permanent shift.
So those are just some of the entrepreneurs that he was talking about in some of this research. And I found it very interesting when he talks about anything less than 100% is actually harder for human beings because of decision fatigue. And we've all heard it before. The whole latent meaning for decision is to cut off. And if you haven't made a decision, then you find yourself in this decision fatigue, or what Dr. Benjamin Hardy calls the mental tug of war, versus actually making the decision. Social psychologists have determined that we have about 50,000 thoughts a day. And for a lot of part-time real estate agents, they can't stop thinking about, should I go full-time? Should I not? This is super scary. What's at risk? What are the pros? What are the cons? What does the timing look like? Should I try to time the market? What about this? What about health insurance? And they're constantly in this decision fatigue that Dr. Hardy talks about. And in oftentimes what occurs is resentment, is that person starts to resent their current situation, causing even more frustration. They start to resent their job, that this job is keeping me back. And they start to think about all the things or all the potential what ifs or what could be. If I could just quit this job, what could be if I went full time? And the fact that they haven't made the decision, in other words, they haven't gone 100% in all the way, they haven't burned the boats, that resentment starts to increase even more. They start to be more frustrated at work. And then what potentially happens is they put themselves in a very vulnerable situation. And that is being forced to make a decision because maybe or perhaps the lack of performance at the full-time job is in jeopardy. And now that job is saying, hey, dude, you're either in or you're out, or that person gets fired, or that person gets laid off, or that person gets reprimanded at work. And now they're risking that full-time income because of lack of decision. And so the successful entrepreneurs in the study, they went all in. They made the decision, and as a result, they cut off anything before it. When that happened, they shifted their identity, which allowed them to act on the new identity versus having one foot in and one foot out. And I see this with part-time real estate agents all the time, that the fact that they're half in, half out, but wanting full-time results causes massive frustration. Little or half commitment can only produce results that are maybe half as good. And so for a lot of people that want to get into real estate full-time, if they're making an income part-time that maybe is what they're earning in their full-time income, they start to think about, okay, what if I was full-time? What is possible? And so before you decide, if you're a part-time real estate agent, before you decide on doing anything, I made a video, it's right here, that outlines all the things you want to have in place before ultimately making the decision to go full-time in real estate.